안녕하세요. 저는 조성윤입니다. 반갑습니다. Hello everyone, my name is Grant Cho. It's nice to meet you all today. In the world today, language is often seen as a barrier that divides groups of people and keeps us all apart. I believe, however, that language is not a barrier, and it doesn't have to be. Rather, language provides us with the lenses that we need in order to understand one another and to communicate and learn about other cultures. Two recent experiences on the same trip have solidified my beliefs. The first experience was on my flight to South Korea this past summer. There was an elderly Chinese woman sitting to my right, just a few rows ahead of me, and naturally I wouldn't have thought any less about it being on a plane packed with passengers. But the reason why this woman stood out to me in particular is because I noticed that every time she left her seat to use the restroom, she had to literally climb over her armrest, and with great difficulty, because her pathway had been blocked by a baby bed attached to the pathway in front of her. Now, the woman was becoming incredibly distressed at her inability to have easy access to the restroom, and she wasn't able to get any help from the crew members because they could only speak English and Korean, neither of which this woman could understand, much less speak herself. And so I sat and I watched her come and go several times, and of course, I felt really bad because I couldn't help her. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute, I know something. With my rudimentary knowledge from 4 semesters of Chinese, I was the tones over and over and over in my mind. And finally, I mustered up the courage to walk up, gently tap her on the shoulder, and ask, 请问, excuse me, 你要坐下吗? Would you like to sit down? 我会请一个空服员帮助你. I can call over a flight attendant to come and help you. And upon hearing this, she looked at me and she smiled, and she kindly declined, explaining that she had a bad leg and would prefer to stand in the aisle until she had to go to the restroom again. And a flight attendant who noticed we were both out of our seats came over to ask us to sit down, and so I took the opportunity to convey her issues. And luckily, the crew members were able to adjust her seat and help her out. Although I wasn't able to solve a problem in its entirety, I was at least able to provide a connection, or at least some comfort by using my facility in the Chinese language. I was able to provide a link between her and the crew, and more importantly, I was able to aid someone who needed help yet couldn't ask for it. Learning Chinese allowed me to positively impact and interact in someone else's life that I wouldn't have been able to if I did not know any Chinese whatsoever. My second experience of language as insight came during that same trip to Korea. Now, growing up as Korean American, born and raised in the States, besides the customary 안녕하세요 and the bow that accompanies it when greeting adults, that was the basic extent of my knowledge of Korean language and culture. I had visited Korea several times as a young boy, but I never really interacted with the local community, besides my grandmother and maybe a few extended family members. But during this 4th visit, something changed. I had the opportunity to join a program and hang out with a group of kids my own age. And being in a scenario where nobody spoke English, you might say I was highly encouraged to begin practicing learning and speaking. And all of a sudden, it was like a switch in my mind had been turned on. And suddenly, things made sense. I was actually reading and understanding signs on the streets, making jokes with my new friends, and even catching on to popular slang words and phrases in Korean. Now, I met most of my friends in a summer program headed by a group of college students at Hong-Ik University. And for the most part, they served as mentors, and all of us younger kids were mentees. And it was all fine and all until I kind of noticed something a little bit strange. And it was that every time a student needed something, they would call the teacher by Sam. In fact, to my utter horror, every mentor in that program was named Sam. I mean, that guy over there is Sam, that girl over there is Sam. How do I know which Sam I want to talk to if they all have the Sam name? I mean, it's crazy. And then, luckily, my friends finally cleared it up for me. The word that I was used to hearing all the time from my short little studies in Korean school was 선생님, which is a word for teacher. But most Korean students use the word 쌤, which is a slang word for short. By communicating to my new friends in their own language and their own words, I was really able to get a better grasp and understanding about their daily life and culture in Korea. Speaking Korean not only allowed me to become closer with them, but also I was no longer a foreigner looking from the outside in. I was able to change myself from being an observer who could only guess at what is going around him into becoming an active participant in his surroundings and immerse myself in their society. In order to fully understand a culture, you have to know its language, because language is the written and verbal manifestation and reflection of any group of people. This task becomes increasingly more difficult, however, as we begin to encounter different languages and cultures that are less and less related to or similar to our own. But the key to overcoming these differences is through language. Language is not a barrier, but rather it is a bridge between our differences and a link between different cultures and customs. So if language is so empowering and eye-opening, why don't more people attempt to make these linguistic connections with others, studying them from linguistic and cultural lenses? I strongly believe why people are so hesitant to learn a new language is due to fear. The fear that they might mess up, speak, fumble over pronunciation and tones, or just aren't good with language, so why even try? If you want something real to fear, I think that it should be this. Every 14 days, a language dies. Yes, dies. This means that there is no longer a single living person on this planet to speak that language. And even more disturbing is that, according to National Geographic's Vanishing Languages, by the next century, nearly half of the roughly 7,000 tongues spoken on this earth will likely disappear, as communities abandon native tongues in favor for English, Mandarin, or Spanish. So then this poses the question: what happens when a language goes silent? What is lost? When a language dies, an entire culture dies with it. And when that happens, we lose the opportunity to see the world from another perspective, and thus we lose another cultural lens. I think that my message is best encapsulated by Marcel Proust, a French novelist who observed that the true voyage of discovery is not by seeing new lands, but rather through seeing with new eyes. Learning the Chinese and Korean languages gave me the lenses that changed myself from being an observer into an active participant in another culture. And by having knowledge in multiple languages, not only was I able to become closer to those around me, but especially with learning more Korean, I was able to gain and preserve a piece of my heritage that I almost lost completely. As American citizens, I am sure that we are all well aware of the fact that America is a nation celebrated with an incredibly diverse and multi-ethnic population. In fact, according to the US Census Bureau, there are over 350 languages spoken in this country alone. However, only 18% of adults are reported to be bilingual. I strongly believe that in order to begin understanding other entire cultures and other entire peoples, we must begin with understanding the diverse people around us in our local communities, and perhaps even revisiting our own cultures and heritage. Language is empowering, language is enlightening, and language is uniting. And now all we have to do is learn it. Thank you.